Isn't homeschooling in one language hard enough? I mean, why would you want to homeschool in two? Hi, I'm Rachel from 7 and All, and in today's video I'm going to be talking to you about why I'm choosing to bilingually homeschool my kids, and talking a little bit about what that looks like at our current stage and what I envision this looking like as my kids grow. This is going to be a really fun video because it's in collab with my friend Gina from Gina B Homeschool. I'll be linking to her channel down below in the description. She and her family are also bilingual homeschoolers, only they have a different language in the mix. They are Portuguese and English homeschoolers. So I'm really excited to hear how she does it, how she integrates Portuguese into their homeschool routine. And I wanted to talk about this to just kind of share my heart behind raising bilingual kids, my heart behind bilingual homeschool, and also to just talk about practically what that looks like, because I think some people have in their minds this kind of vision of we do twice as much homeschool as any kind of homeschool family who homeschools in one language, and I don't think that's very realistic and probably makes it seem kind of impossible. So yeah, I wanted to talk about all of that. Let's get started. So what inspired this video was actually the fact that I got kind of a comment or suggestion or a question that was like, why are you doing bilingual homeschool? Why don't you just do what Spanish-speaking families in English-speaking countries do? They send their kids to school in English, and then as soon as the kids come home from school, they speak Spanish with their families. Basically the comment was, that works for so many families, that has worked for so many families, why don't you do something more like that instead of this bilingual homeschool thing? And so I guess I would say my main reason for doing something like not doing that is that I think that type of language approach works best in exactly that situation. A Spanish-speaking family, two native Spanish-speaking parents, two fluent Spanish-speaking parents, speaking Spanish all the time at home, and then sending their kids off to school where they're speaking English in an English environment. I think it would work better in that exact situation as described as compared to our family situation, which is one native speaker parent, the other parent being me, who is growing. I'm growing a lot in my Spanish skills ever since my kids were born, ever since I've really started putting effort into it. But I've never lived in a Spanish-speaking community. I've never had to use it to communicate. I have a lot more growing to do. So we don't have the two fully fluent Spanish-speaking parents. And we also don't send our kids to school. So it would be a little bit like, for us, homeschool, is wound throughout our days. So I can't quite imagine where would you draw the line between, okay, now we're homeschooled and we're doing this in English, and now we are family and now we're talking in Spanish. So I think with the homeschool dynamic, you can't necessarily have that dichotomy of school in English, family conversation in Spanish. The other reason why I don't lean toward that approach is that I do want my kids to be educated Spanish speakers as well as conversational. Conversational language skills are extremely important. A lot of people can study, textbook foreign languages for years and never become conversational. So I am a big believer in the power of conversational language skills. But also, you can be very conversant in a language without being educated in the language, without being very literate in the language. So you could speak Spanish in many, many conversations for years and be very comfortable in it. But the minute you go into a science textbook or more of a targeted vocabulary in a certain field, you're going to feel a lot more lost because you haven't learned that type of vocabulary within that language. You've only learned that vocabulary in a different language setting. So there is some vocabulary you're only going to learn through academics, through books, through kind of targeted learning in that language, subject-based learning. So I know that perfectly balanced bilingualism, that kind of ideal of two completely fluent languages, people that could converse on any subject in either of their languages, that's actually pretty unrealistic. But I do want to give my kids the opportunity of knowing more Spanish than would just normally come up in conversation. In our conversations in English, we only are using a fraction of the words that we actually do understand or could use when writing for those of us who have been educated in English. So I kind of want the same thing for them in Spanish. The third big reason is that when you use languages for different things, you just kind of gradually come up with certain kind of ideas or perceptions of those languages. And if we have this idea that, English is the language I use for really learning stuff in. English is the language I use for work and for school. But Spanish, that's just for talking in. I think it's kind of doing Spanish a disservice because there's a lot of great literature in Spanish as well. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of poets and artists and great writers that we can only appreciate in the form that they wrote their art in if we know Spanish well enough to appreciate them. So I want my kids to think of Spanish as a language that they can learn in. And that's another one of my big motivations for trying to incorporate both languages. Now, as for what this looks like. At this stage, my children are very young. We are still very much embracing the preschool stage of life. We are not trying to rush through it at all. We are all right now in the golden years for language development, both in understanding the language that we hear and in just beginning to build that vocabulary. So we aren't into formal studies at all yet. We are just in preschool. The problem is, even in preschool, I was finding so many more resources that were the kind of resources I loved and wanted to use, cool literature-based resources, but they were all in English. And then it was too much of a temptation to me. It's just easier to use English resources, to read more English books. It's easier to read more English books. And I was finding that we were spending more of our days reading English books, doing English-based activities, and just fun stuff like that. And that was at the detriment of our Spanish learning. So I kind of took the hard way out, and I wrote Puramente Preescolar. I wrote a preschool curriculum and started selling it. So this is a bit of an excessive example of commitment to bilingual homeschool. But I decided that I'm not going to take the easy way out and just do an English preschool program that I really like. Instead, I'll write my own Spanish preschool program, because if I have a plan and I have a script written out for me, if I have the basic ideas I need to communicate in Spanish, I can work from there. But if I have to make up everything on my own in Spanish, I'm going to freeze and I'm going to feel kind of stuck, because Spanish is not my comfort language. It's not the language that I can just be automatic in. So, and by write a preschool curriculum in Spanish, what I mean that I did is I wrote it in English after researching Spanish picture books and Spanish songs and all that to include. I wrote English activities based on those, and my husband translated it into good Spanish. So don't worry, this is not actually, the Spanish is not being written by me, it's being written by my husband, who actually knows what he's doing. So you can find the Puramente Preescolar units on my website, wheredyoulearnthat.com, and I'll link that down below as well. If you are also on a Spanish and English bilingual homeschooling journey, and if those would be helpful to you. But that's been the big step that we've taken, is switching to using an actual Spanish preschool plan. And that's been a big thing for me. The other big commitment that I've made to help increase our Spanish exposure, to help build a habit of learning in Spanish, is that I invest in Spanish picture books. And I'm trying to, as much as possible, I don't buy English books, I buy Spanish books to the greatest extent that I can. I am trying to fill up our bookshelves with Spanish books, and we read Spanish books every single day. So we are just reading these books. My oldest son is absolutely in love with books. He always wants to be read to. You just say books to him and he's on the couch, there, ready, waiting. He loves them. So this is a great resource for us at this stage of life. So right now with bilingual homeschool, that's what it looks like. It's a commitment to buying Spanish picture books instead of all the English picture books that I see. So that's, if I have book money, I am prioritizing Spanish books 100%. It's taking the time to write a preschool curriculum in Spanish. So I guess the trend that I'm seeing so far here is that bilingual homeschool is gonna take a little bit of extra work on the planning side, a little bit of extra work, and sometimes money on the sourcing side, because where I live, I have found it's more expensive to source picture books in Spanish than in English. Now, of course, this is going to change, and it's going to need to get more formal as my boys grow older. I follow other bilingual homeschoolers like Bilingual Together on Instagram, at Bilingual Together, who is further along in this journey of bilingual homeschooling in English and Spanish. I kind of keep an eye on her, see what resources she recommends and what she's using. I keep my ear out to any curriculums that offer Spanish editions, like Handwriting Without Tears has a complete Spanish edition of their whole handwriting program. So that's a really easy handwriting program to choose for us, rather than a different handwriting curriculum that's only offered in English. Kind of the general approach I'm going to take is do my research, keep my ears and eyes open, and try to find Spanish resources for teaching whenever possible. We can read our Bible stories in Spanish instead of reading them in English. We can I'm hoping that I can try to find some science, early science books for my kids in Spanish, instead of just going for the English editions that are maybe easier for us to find where we live. But I know that they're out there, and so it is going to be a little extra work, but I am very, very sold. Having fallen in love with studying languages and learning languages as an adult, I am 100% sold on the idea of exposing my kids to language and trying to raise them speaking multiple languages from birth, because it's so much easier when you're a kid. It's so much easier, and thankfully I do have I have my husband in full support. This is something that's very, very important to him as well, to have his kids speaking his heart language and being connected with his culture and heritage in this way. He grew up speaking Spanish, of course, but then he also went on to study Spanish in college, and he was really just in college blown away by the literature that he got to read and the poetry and the music that he got to learn when he was actually studying Spanish formally and studying the language itself, the literature of the language. So he's actually very passionate about being educated in Spanish as well. So they have both of us. It's going to be a journey. I know it's not always going to be taking, the easiest road, but it's a road that I'm excited to be on. And even if you are not a bilingual family, I am so happy for you to just follow along on our adventure and our experiment of how to do this, because it feels a little bit, I was homeschooled. I feel like I should know how to homeschool, but bilingual homeschool is new to me. So it is a new adventure. And if you like this video, if you like this channel, I would be so happy for you to subscribe and follow along. Give this video a thumbs up. It definitely helps. And leave a comment below. I love to hear from you guys and hear your thoughts on the videos I make. All right, see you. Bye.